Welcome to an audiobook entitled Parish Management and Operations, The Buck Stops Here, narrated by Catholic author Michael Brinda. We hope you enjoy the segment and find it useful in your ministerial work.
Chapter 20. Culture? The role of organizational culture is poorly understood. Why? You can literally get your hands on and read an organizational policy handbook or procedure, but how do you get your hands on and read a culture? We are not speaking of different national cultures, which are a completely separate concept. We are speaking of organizational culture. Organizational culture truly exists and has a profound impact, but it is not tangible. It is a force that influences, but what does it do? What is its purpose? Is culture really that important? Why should you care about culture? Where does culture come from? Do you serve culture, or does culture serve you? If culture erodes, can it be restored? How do you create something, yet it cannot be touched? How is culture sustained? And a critical question, do you change a broken culture? No. Much more on why you do not change a broken culture and what you must do instead in further chapters. Given the innate and natural transparency of organizational culture, very often little to no attention, much less deeper thought, is given to the role of culture. Employees and volunteers alike are allowed to perpetually operate under the unspoken illusion that things just operate. As such, when one is finally introduced to all things culture, it can be a bit of a shock to learn the true role of organizational culture, subsequently take the measure of the culture that exists where you work, and then face the fact your culture is a perpetual train wreck in progress, and you must do what it takes to first create and then maintain a correct culture. Specifically, you must create, install, and maintain the correct culture, or you are just wasting your time in PMO. For example, behind the scenes, one of the first things new Microsoft CEO Nadella did was to start to upgrade Microsoft's culture. And why did Nadella do that? Because culture is akin to the human heartbeat, and if your heartbeat has a problem, your entire body will necessarily also have problems. Some examples of people trying to describe a broken culture? Something will be off in the energy at work, and little by little you'll see and feel the dysfunction. You'll see it in the way colleagues communicate with one another, face-to-face and via digital communications. You'll feel the bad energy in the way meetings are conducted and the fact that everybody spends their mental and emotional energy trying to deflect blame rather than solving problems and beating their goals. A friend will ask you, how do you like the job so far? You'll say, honestly, there's something wrong in this place. Nobody speaks candidly. Nobody wants to speak up, even about obvious things that are broken. If the study of organizational culture is new to you, keep the above reflections in mind as you listen to what follows. Please do not jump to conclusions. Listen and re-listen if you do not understand. When your culture is broken, you're not going to improve your organization until your culture is 100% correct, no matter how much you know and what else you do. That's a sobering reality. Chapter 21. The relationship of performance to culture. We never set our performance measurement bar in PMO to past results. Never measure performance in anything by looking at where you are in relation to how far you have come. Nobody cares how far you have come. Understand? We are not giving out participation ribbons here. The only valid performance measurement yardstick is to take a long, hard look at where you are in relation to where you should be. Make sure you understand this point. Therefore, A, claiming to desire superior PMO, and B, having what it takes to achieve superior PMO, and C, doing what it takes to actually be superior at what you do in PMO are three different points, yet they must harmoniously learn to dance together in a blending of both art and science. Blending the above points is an impossible blend to master when uninformed about culture. This is precisely why there are many who would claim to desire superior PMO, many who present empty claims to realizing superior PMO based on incorrect measurement yardsticks, but there are so very, very few that actually attain a superior level of PMO. Never mind what people think they have achieved, and absolutely never mind measuring performance through the sadly misinformed thinking of, hey, everybody, look where we are and how far we've traveled. Isn't it wonderful? This is a ridiculously stupid and flawed performance measurement yardstick. Only look at reality, objective truth, and most especially where you are in relation to where you should be. Further, know most people can't measure by this yardstick because they have no context by which to know or measure superior results. How can you measure what you have never seen or experienced? And where do we find this context to define, know, live, and measure actual superior PMO? The short answer is we find it in the PMO organizational culture. But that answer is insufficient. Why? Because that answer makes the invalid assumption that whatever PMO culture exists is the correct culture. And you must realize that no matter what kind, some culture always exists in any organization. I am here to report to you that there is for all intents and purposes a 0% chance the PMO culture that exists where you will be assigned or currently work will be the correct culture, the culture you need to deliver superior PMO. Here a quote from Plato. The soul takes nothing with her to the next world but her education and her culture. At the beginning of the journey to the next world, one's education and culture can either provide the greatest assistance or else act as the greatest burden to the person who has just died. End quote. Setting aside Plato's lack of a correct understanding on the Trinity, heaven, the soul, etc., Plato was on to something here. Many centuries ago, Plato recognized that your level of education alone is not enough to succeed. One needs education, which we have labeled here the science side of PMO. But we need the science and culture. What is the culture? Culture is the environment under which you practice the science learned through your education. To repeat, culture is the environment under which you practice the science learned through your education. Great assistance to you, or your greatest burden, is the result of how you blend the art and science of PMO. Yet so many focus on acquiring knowledge and education, the necessary science of job skills, in other words, and completely overlook the role played by the art of creating organizational culture building in influencing satisfactory results, much less superior results. More specifically, how does an organization's culture shape job performance? Is this a critical question to answer? Yes, very much so. Why? Because it does you no good as a PMO administrator to know what you are doing technically with the science, to have a fully trained PMO staff that in turn also knows what they are doing, if they are trapped working under a broken culture. All the education and job-related knowledge in the world will never overcome being animated on the job by a broken organizational culture. Oh, that's not good. To quote Peter Drucker, the first priority of the nonprofit executive's own development is to strive for excellence. End quote. The culture is the invisible but critical organizational glue that binds everyone working in PMO to our common cause and goal, delivering superior PMO service. Far, far too much emphasis is placed on training employees in the nuts and bolts science of doing their respective jobs, with little to no attention paid to the culture that exists under which people do their jobs. The culture is what animates all employees while they're actually learning or performing any assigned daily task. Thus, culture always steers results. Sometimes we might mislabel organizational culture as attitude, but culture is much more than mere attitude. How so? Well, of course, first one must know what he or she is doing on the job. The science of the work, in other words. Of course, one must know how to complete each assigned task. And it is precisely at this point the superior performance train jumps the tracks in most organizations. Why? The master role played by organizational culture, the overwhelming influence of culture on what, where, when, why, and how anything is done, is not given proper context or understood by management. And what is often substituted for an understanding of the influence of culture on performance and results? The as previously mentioned broken yardstick of observed busyness. If people in PMO appear busy, well then, we must be producing superior results. This is complete nonsense. Naturally, you must be concerned with the characteristics and mechanics of your personal or PMO staff development. In other words, the science and mechanics of PMO. This is necessary information that rightfully concerns you becoming a fundamentally competent administrator or leader, as well as to further the development of paid or volunteer personnel who may report to you. This is all well and good and necessary, but to what end do we learn this particular nuts and bolts information? The obvious answer is to improve PMO delivery wherever we serve, but you don't need to listen to this book to learn the X's and O's, the nuts and bolts of parish management, when such information is already readily available from other books and articles. Just read the other books and articles. Therefore, do not expect to find herein a restatement of all step-by-step instruction you can easily find elsewhere. However, note this well. You can read every how-to book on management ever written or that ever will be written and still fail to produce and deliver superior results. And why would this be? This is why. There is another question, really the most critical question, standing behind the first question in any organization. After we approach and master the science of PMO, or anything really, the mechanics and principles of what we must do day in and day out on the job, and this part is not complicated in PMO. Now what? Here is precisely where people mistakenly end their search for knowledge, because after all, they now know the mechanics of what to do, the science of the job. Yet they go to work and wonder why things are not superior even though they and everyone else well know the mechanics of doing their particular jobs. The reason for this? If I know what I am doing, why aren't things improving? Conundrum. They stopped learning before they correctly answered another critical question. What else influences how well or how poorly anyone actually executes on the job day in and day out? The answer is expressed in 6 words: the culture they are working under. To quote Jack Welch, Culture drives great results. End quote. Establishing and maintaining the culture is the art, not the science, of practicing PMO. Therefore, I don't care how much how-to knowledge anyone has about their job, any job. If you do not set the organizational culture correctly, you will never deliver superior PMO or anything else. Repeat, if you do not set the organizational culture correctly, you will never deliver superior PMO or anything else. This is why we can find both consistently superior organizations and chronically broken organizations in every sector, business, government, military, or religious. Some get their organizational culture right, and sadly, some never do. Organizational culture is paramount to superior PMO. Of course you must know what you are doing, but then what? Is that all there is to any job, of any nature, anywhere? Simply know what you are doing and you are good to go? No. There is one more organizational ingredient, the paramount factor influencing results, and that is culture. Why is the culture where you operate paramount to effective PMO? This is precisely why. You can have the entire budget, all the clock time, all the fully trained PMO staff and volunteer personnel, all the equipment, and all the higher authority approvals you need to fully execute your PMO mission under a well-crafted mission statement, and still fail miserably to produce our goal of superior results. Why? How? How is it possible you can have everything you need and still be mediocre and fail miserably? Precisely this way. If your PMO culture is broken, corrupted, or dysfunctional, and fully note your acknowledgement and recognition of this fact is not a requirement for it to be so. What you or others do in PMO will necessarily be in whole or in part broken, corrupted, and dysfunctional. How so? Notice you can touch your financial statement in the sense you can know your bank account balance in real time, know your debt level, know your expenses, etc. You can read your personal schedule and know you have enough time allotted to devote to the task at hand. You can count heads in relation to the work that must be done and know you have enough personnel to do the job. You can talk to those who are tasked with doing the job and know they are well trained in their craft. You can see with your own eyes that you have all the necessary equipment you need to complete the work at hand. But you cannot see in the same tangible ways the culture within the PMO department. And it is the culture that animates everyone involved in actually executing the above and much more. Oh. The culture is akin to the air we breathe. You don't see it, you don't smell it, at least we hope, and you don't think about it. But unless it is perfect, you will pay a heavy price for breathing polluted air. And the more polluted the air, the faster your health erodes. The importance and impact of culture in any type of organization cannot be overstated. Everything right and great about an organization is directly and inexorably related to its culture. And the corollary thought, everything wrong and mediocre about an organization is directly and inexorably related to its culture. There is no escaping the impact of culture on any organization. The culture of an organization is an invisible but eminently controllable working atmosphere that animates and motivates what people do, how effectively they do it, and with what level of energy and passion they put into their duties and responsibilities. You will come to understand that a proper culture is your best and closest friend as an administrator or leader of any enterprise. However, due to matters related to establishing, building, and maintaining the correct or incorrect culture, in all organizational policy making and subsequent execution, you will find there is a direct connection linking the culture of any organization to its success or the opposite, perpetual employee, volunteer, mediocrity, and institutionalized organizational stagnation. You can have all the tangible assets you need in working capital, trained personnel and equipment, etc., at your disposal, and yet still fail miserably in delivering robust, vibrant, and superior PMO services to your parish and the community. Why? How is this possible? Because if the culture in your organization is broken, the work product of your organization will be at best condemned to mediocrity, or at worst, be a clumsy and disjointed mess. A quote from Peter Drucker. Executives who make a really special contribution enable the organization to see itself as having a bigger mission than the one it has inherited. End quote. Now, it is far more likely than not you will be assigned to administer work within an existing parish and/or church organization of some sort, as opposed to being given your own parish to build from the ground up. In other words, although you arrive at your parish with no figurative baggage and a clean personal slate, you will be inheriting an existing culture as opposed to being afforded a blank culture canvas from which you can create the proper culture from the outset. As such, it becomes a fair question to ask. What tasks do you tackle first, second, third, etc. upon your arrival? Raise more money? Train your personnel? Hire more personnel? Procure necessary equipment? Replace obsolete equipment? Answer: none of these. This is what you do first. You address the pre-existing culture model first, because as sure as you are reading this, your inherited culture will be broken.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.